So he was first exposed to pornography when he was 7 or 8 years old, he thinks.
And a lot of times I'd hide him under my bed or in my dresser, that sort of thing, and I'd flip back to him. I felt naturally drawn to them.
A lot of the times my family would be gone and I'd be at home alone, and that would be like when I would view it.
Go to the library and try to find books that were exciting, of sexual nature.
Like while you're looking at it, I suppose it's like it's thrilling, like it's awesome while you're in it, but then afterwards it's just, I guess, this feeling of like disgust and shame and like, why did I just do that? What was the point of that?
Feeling pretty sneaky about it, feeling, got away with it.
And he did get in trouble even in kindergarten for having cut out like the underwear ads, he and his friend, and they had those in their desks in kindergarten.
So one of the fascinating things that's been happening over the last 10 years is because of technology, we've been able to see how pornography and sexual addiction affects the brain.
Pornography is a drug which produces an addictive neurochemical trap. It is a pheromone. It changes the set point, the pleasure set point of the brain, and creates a new normal through the process of neuroplasticity, or change in the way our brain perceives and values pleasure.
Learning about the addiction has been what has really helped me to realize that it's not me. It's not between me and some other woman. This is something that's wrong with his brain.
It's not just a morality issue, right? That this is a brain issue, that these behaviors affect your brain and your ability to be able to function in your life.
But learning about the changes in the brain and the steps that can be taken to actually reverse those changes, that damage, that really gave me hope.
So one transmitter is dopamine, and that's centered part of our pleasure and reward system of our part of our brain. And dopamine's released in it whenever there is a sexual experience and something that gives us a kind of a high in order for us to want to continue to seek out that same activity.
Have anything bad happen to me, that would be my quick fix. And, give me that dopamine rush, make me happy again, or at least numb the pain.
It is as destructive, if not more so, than other even hard drugs.
I had periods of time where I just gritted my teeth and white-knuckled through it, but inevitably, I always fell back into it.
As we're engaging in those behaviors, oxytocin and vasopressin is released that bonds us to those activities. So we educate our clients about the neurological pathways, because this isn't just about their willpower or them being weak and not being strong enough. It's about the things that are going on in their brain.
You're playing with fire when you become a watcher of pornography, because you don't know how your brain is going to interact with pornography.
These are good men and women, good people. These are not people who are going out looking for that. They're people who are coming across it innocently.
So where they may have started off with some very basic pornographic images, it has a tendency to escalate, going to massage parlors, going to escorts, seeking prostitutes, looking to hook up with anonymous individuals online.
Progression from nudity to hardcore sexual acts, bestiality, sadomasochism, child porn. What the brain is really searching for is something new. Novelty, change. Pornography capitalizes on that.
It can extend to various things. Not everybody falls into all those categories, but each one of them falls into some category where it continues to escalate. Very rarely have I seen somebody who started with pornography and it just stayed basic pornography.
So for me, I started out with just pictures, and that was it, that did it for me. And then it got progressively worse. It got stories, videos, intense videos, long videos, and there didn't seem to be an end.
Got to the point where I was doing it a lot. It became where I wanted to try it out. Like I wanted to see how it felt on a person.
I had come to realize that it's not just men looking at pictures. It's something that changes in the brain. And that was a page turner for me, that I realized, okay, this is something that needs professional help.
Now, I'm a marriage counselor. About 90% of the people I see with marriage issues have pornography issues as well. And I'm convinced that that is the central cause. The isolation, the shame, the dishonesty, the lies, that's the central cause of marriage disharmony today.
As I told her, I remember just shaking. I broke down into tears. I was so ashamed of myself.
Do I divorce him? Do I keep married? We have a child coming.
You know, we're butting heads because I'm trying to say what you did is terrible, crazy, terrible, and I'm angry and I'm mad and I'm like a cat in a cage. I'm just like, you know, I just want to, you know, tear him to pieces, and he's just trying to protect himself. You know, he's getting found out and he has other deeper, uglier things that he's hiding still. And
all of this time, all of this money, all of this effort that has been put towards a sexual addiction, you could be something incredible.
When he would do that, I would know what was going on, but he would lie about it continually. And then you start to not trust yourself.
And this is the destructive power of pornography, that it disrupts our primary relationships. Without pornography, if an individual is distressed, their instinct sends them to their loving relationships, to a spouse or to a friend. But with pornography addiction present, they go internal. They don't reach out, they reach in to themselves, to their own sexual behavior.
His story was more of telling me, don't worry about it, every guy does it, every guy needs it, it's normal, it's healthy.
I spent so much time trying to figure out what was truth and what was a lie, and I would look back at pictures and they would just make me sick because I thought, well, you were lying.
And not only did I have to go get tested, he went and got tested when I was on the table, you know, gynecologist table, and we were going over what I could possibly have, you know, chlamydia, syphilis, herpes, and then she started talking about, we're going to test you for HIV, we're going to test you for AIDS. I don't think there was a time in my life when I've ever felt so defeated as a woman and a wife and a lover and a friend and a human being.
So the problem is these men are viewing these images of women and have fantasies of these women that don't have any needs and are just there to fulfill their needs. And so when the real women in their lives have needs, they become angry and resentful about it.
And Nicholas Tinbergen, who won the Nobel Prize in 1973, described a supernormal stimulus. He first started with birds. He painted bird eggs bigger and prettier than normal bird eggs and found that the birds would leave their own eggs and roost the plaster eggs because they were bigger and prettier. It was a higher, supranormal, over what they encountered in nature. Then he painted female butterflies' wings bigger and brighter than normal female butterflies, and these male butterflies actually mated or tried to with the paper female butterflies and ignored the real female butterflies.
Nobody can compete with altered, fake, over-enhanced, and absolutely extreme pornography.
You have this virtual attachment to these artificial humans.
It's not reality, and I think that's the problem, is that the men get sucked into that and then they expect it, and then the women feel like that's what they need to be.
And I don't want this dull, normal. I want exciting. I want new. I want enhanced. Dysfunction, erectile dysfunction result.
Pornography is leading to sexual dysfunction. Psychology Today online had an article 2 years ago about something they called porn-induced sexual dysfunction. And what they said is it's a problem for guys in their 20s. They've been looking at pornography for 10 years by that time, masturbating to it, and that's imprinted on the brain. That's where they get their sexual excitement.
We're finding men younger and younger are having difficulties with erectile dysfunction because what they have found arousing in the pornography, they're not able to achieve in their experiences with women.
I went through the days, but I wasn't living. I looked at pornography every day in order to self-medicate. I would cut myself because I would so much rather feel physical pain than emotional pain. And
I viewed pornography so much, such a big problem, that it escalated, and I sexually abused my own sister.
My husband got to the point where he was so despondent. He thought many, many times about taking his own life.
Hated myself, hated God, hated everybody. Why me? Why as a child, for crying out loud?
Pornography images are resulting in a massive shift in the way our children are developing their sexual template.
The premature sexualization of our youth is at an all-time high, and it's only going to continue to get higher based on the trends that we're seeing.
You know, you become sexualized as a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, joking about it, kind of following the lead of where this pornography is taking you.
Psychologists say that, it's not like some casual observation that you see that flits on the mind and goes out. It's permanently imprinted on the mind, and those children, as much as they would like to, cannot escape those memories and escape those images.
I still remember those images of what I saw as an 8-year-old child. I can't remember what I did last week, but these things, they just stuck with me.
But when they go to the internet with curiosity, they're not going to get healthy, good information about sexuality. What they're going to get is a vast array of pornography that doesn't educate them well about what sex really is, about what relationships really are. They get the opposite.
But children aren't in a capacity to make informed long-term decisions about that. Again, we're learning much more about the brain. Children's brains are very uniquely unadapted to that.
Remember, their frontal lobes aren't formed, and they're going to be able to process that and understand all the nuances and implications of the behavior later. It's ridiculous.
Now, if you can think of anything deviant and dark, somebody else already has and has created a forum online to post it, to publish it, to promote it, to expose it.
So I'm aware that there are these comprehensive sexuality education programs that are emerging out there that are teaching children to explore, engage in sexual behaviors and activities that are pleasurable and whatever they want to do. That kind of early exposure for children is damaging to their development, to both their social and sexual development, that inhibits their ability to have healthy sexual, emotional relationships later on in life.
When sexual freedom is the priority, when people are encouraged to begin sexual activity at an early age, to explore and to experiment with different partners, then sexual health suffers.
It is a normal, natural response for your body to respond to another naked body that way. But it's just not the right time for someone so young.
There's no stop valve. It's experience all the sex you want. If it were a cake, it would be eating a chocolate cake at every meal.
Infection, cancer, infertility, unwanted pregnancy. It is primarily girls and women who suffer the consequences of early sexual activity and multiple partners. That's not sexist. That's biology.
If they could connect the dots and see that our children are being sexualized so early that they are developing unhealthy body image and sexual relationship images of what that should be like.
In an attempt to provide it for adults, has fallen into the hands of children and adolescents in a way that is seriously destructive to their own emotional and sexual development.
The darkest moment in my life was when I was put in the holding cell, and I was cuffed and I was shackled. I couldn't move. I didn't know what was going to happen to me, and I didn't know if I'd ever see my family again.
There's no question that pornography leads to the denigration and the demeaning of women. No question. Because the ideation is such that women are subservient. Their job is to only satisfy men either as a slave or as a sexual toy or as a prostitute.
A lot of people today, particularly in the United States, think of pornography as nothing more than skin flicks. And they dismiss it as people being too uptight, prudish, and so forth. If they say anything against pornography, they have absolutely no comprehension of the degrading aspect of so much of today's pornography.
14-year-old boy goes on his phone, sexts different girls. His language was so obscene, so vulgar, calling them names that are inappropriate. Where did he get the ideation that this is all they are good for? It was pornography.
And the objectification of women today, I think, is one of the major problems we face in cultures around the world.
All these people that I was looking at, I was making them seem, like sexual objects rather than people.
And the feelings I was feeling, I didn't feel any remorse. I didn't feel any compassion. I didn't care about anybody else besides myself, and that made me just act out on my sister, and just made me. I mean, I didn't care about her feelings. I just cared about my own.
It's surprising that many of those who are seeking to improve the status of women are passive or accepting of pornography, which is so demeaning to women.
Shelley Lubin, who now works on the good side and helps fight pornography, former pornography actress, said many actresses admit they've experienced sexual abuse, physical abuse, etc. She says the same horrible violations we experience then we relive in front of the camera, and we hate every minute of it.
So also the Bridge study showed of the top 250 porn titles, 90% of them depict violence against women, as defined by slapping, hitting, hair pulling, gagging, choking, and name-calling.
The more violence and abuse that is depicted in pornography has a greater sell value on the internet. Pornographers know this, and they push this.
Do the men that watch that just decide, hey, I can watch this, but it's all fantasy. It's not real. It is real. The women are actually experiencing what's on the screen.
I'm a victim of pornography. I would spend the night at a friend's house when I was between 7 and 9 years old, and her father would drug us and then molest us, take photos.
So you need to understand that this is someone's mother. This is someone's daughter. This is someone's sister. And you wouldn't want your mother or daughter or sister to be viewed in that way.
It's incredibly painful to think that those traumas, that pain, that those parts of me are out there. I don't know where they are. I don't know who looks at them. What if there are people I know in my life right now who are viewing child pornography and they're looking at me? It's gut-wrenching, it's nauseating.
We know, for instance, from the HALT meta-analysis, which did look at multiple studies and did conclude that, yes, men who view pornography are more accepting of the rape myth, that women enjoy rape and want it.
Today, violence against women is on the increase. Rape is on the increase. In the UK, the government has identified a substantial number of child-on-child victims who were harmed because of the pornography consumption of the perpetrator.
It's bullcrap it doesn't affect anyone else. Yes, it does. If it weren't for him starting on pornography when he was a young man, regular, just looking at naked women in a magazine, I would have never been through that.
I was only a kid when I viewed pornography. I was 9 or 10. I was little. How can those things be accessible to little ones of that age when guns are locked up until you're 21? You can't access those. You can't access anything else. But pornography, one of the most life-damaging things, is accessible so young.
I have had cases where the pornography addiction in a man progressed to the point where he violently raped his own daughter.
Most of the individuals that I work with, their desire and appetite for seeking somebody like a prostitute had its origins in their exposure to pornography.
And you have no way of knowing that that man or that woman on the screen is not traumatized by what they did so that you could watch it.
Victims of prostitution and violence and trafficking will tell you that the industry has gotten so much more difficult because the men are demanding much more violence than they ever did before.
They seem out of control. They really don't want to be doing the things they're doing. They love their families and they want to maintain a level of love and connectedness there, but their compulsion and their addiction through pornography drives them into these promiscuous relationships, to prostitution, and it's devastating to them.
the pornography is fueled by the women who are trafficked. They're the ones who are used to make the movies that are so popular that, the videos are sold around the world. More than 11,000 a year are developed in comparison to 400 movies that are produced in Hollywood.
Ultimately, I realized he'd been with these women from another country in a sex club. You just had sex with women, like sex trafficked women, prostitutes? And he looked at me almost like he didn't know. Almost like it didn't click in his head until I said that. And he thought, oh.
Women are very vulnerable in undeveloped countries where the traffickers, the criminals come in and they say to the women, we can make you a movie star. And of course they start by saying you have to do this to get a foot in the door. They end up making the terrible porn movies and becoming prostitutes in a brothel somewhere, in a bar somewhere.
Detailed stories that just are so painful when I think about the woman on the other side of what he had done. And, now when we talk about it, I see the pain in his eyes.
And any country in the world that legalizes prostitution has more sex trafficking. It creates a permissive attitude and an attitude of further disrespect for women.
Lauren Bethel said, sexual trafficking is the exploitation of vulnerability. In other words, women who, if they could choose to do something else, they would.
So pornography creates the demand for prostitution and trafficking, and that's so important to understand.
I think sex trafficking isn't just a foreign problem, something that happens in another country, somewhere else. It was going on in my neighborhood down the street from me. I can point them out. I know what to look for.
He was working with a pimp who had been imprisoned, and he said, tell me how you find the girls that you use for your movies. And the pimp said, oh, it's easy. I just go to the malls. And he said, most teenage girls and preteen girls will go with their friends. If I see a girl who's alone, I go up to her and I say, hey, you've got beautiful eyes. He said, if she looks at me and says, thank you, I let her go on because I know that she's not vulnerable. But if she looks down at her shoes and says, no, I don't have pretty eyes, he says, I know I've got her.
It's impossible to be searching out adult pornography on the internet without finding child pornography. And people will say, oh no, I never look at child pornography. And I say, oh really? You mean you've never seen a woman who's 17 and a half years of age? What about a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old?
I was speaking in Arizona a few years ago, and a prosecutor was there who prosecuted obscenity and sex crimes there in Arizona. And he called adult pornography the gateway drug for child porn.
The fact that as soon as seeing these adults have sexual relationships, as soon as seeing men rape women on screen isn't enough, the only thing left is kids. It's all that's left. And where are those kids coming from?
And they're arresting many married men, grandparents, many high school kids, because they don't distinguish between adult and child pornography after a time.
So they're trying to make actresses look either pubescent or even prepubescent to sculpt those brain tastes younger and younger.
That accounts for the worldwide boom in child pornography, I believe. This consumption of adult pornography on a steady basis, where the brain looks for and needs harder material.
One of my responsibilities was to work at a children's home where the children were court adjudicated away from their parents because the parents had used them for prostitution purposes and child pornography purposes. So these parents had actually taken pictures of their children and put them on the internet, okay, for the sale. They had also sold their children at different parties and things for sexual favors. It wasn't just one or two kids. We were dealing with 50, 60, 70, 100 different children who would have this take place in their life.
In more developed countries, the runaways, the castaways, the throwaway children are the ones who are so vulnerable because the criminal networks know where they are, they know how to find them, and they prey on them. The experts say that a child who runs away will probably be in the hands of a criminal network within 48 hours.
Individuals that commit crimes against children, for example, sexual crimes against children, report to a high percentage that their issues began with pornography, that they find themselves needing more stimulation from things that they would never have originally described as being sexually arousing to them.
Every country should have laws prohibiting the distribution of adult and child pornography. Now, many people argue, well, it should be just child pornography. Adult pornography, you should do what you want. People should have that right. But when we know that looking at adult pornography leads many to child pornography, we have to go back to the source of the crime, and it's adult pornography.
When I walk into a room, I don't think, who in here struggles with pornography? Now I think, who in here hasn't encountered pornography in their lifetime?
It is going to continue, and it's going to continue to take lives and drain them of every ounce of happiness. We need to do something about it.
Knowledge is power. I firmly believe that, particularly with this addiction. The more people learn about the addiction, about the chemistry that happens in the brain during the addiction process and what an addict goes through, the more they will be able to be a support.
I think it's so important for those that are struggling to always remember that there's not anything that's happened to you that you can't heal from.
I finally see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I know that there is for everyone.
There's a great Elizabeth Kubler-Ross quote about beautiful people. And she says that beautiful people don't just happen, that the most beautiful people we have known despair and loss and misery and suffering.
No one said it would be easy, but they said it would be worth it. And I can testify in my life that I've done intense amounts of work, but where I am now, there's no place I'd rather be.
It's time for us to take very seriously what's happening in our cyber world, in our cyber universe. Just wake up to the fact that our children, our young adults, and our adults are all in this new, brave new world, if you will. Things are not what they used to be even 10 years ago.
Pornography is a universal solvent that dissolves emotion, family, marriage, and government. Indeed, it destroys our humanity.
The war for safe families and decent communities is a winnable war. You are not too late to the battle.
All hands on deck. The battle is on. We need you. We need your time, your energy, your efforts, your interest. Please join us in this fight for sanity and serenity, for peace and prosperity, for today and for all our tomorrows.
I am on a mission now to spread to all the world, to all the women, to anyone that will hear me. If we can all come together, and if we can all rally around and not be afraid to talk about it, and not be afraid to get educated, and not be afraid to work together and fight for the common good, then we will all start healing, and our society will become better, it will become stronger.
Good afternoon. I have a small glimpse into how much work went into that film. Can we give an extra round of applause to all those that produced that? That was incredible. Incredible. Thank you. And many of those interviewed in there are here today, and I wish to thank them publicly as well. I would like to begin at an important place, and that is to remember, to go back to the beginning, and to remember that marriage begins with a promise. And more than a promise, it begins with a vow, a covenant, a contractual bond, or holy union, depending on the faith tradition of the couple. But no matter what the promise is called, it encompasses, either clearly stated or clearly implied, commitments related to enduring fidelity, trust, honor, respect, and the benevolent care of one another. These protective and distinguishing commitments are far more than just nice things couples utter at weddings. They are, in fact, the very ingredients for stable, satisfying marriages, and hence stable families and communities. Religious teachings from around the world, along with a growing body of scientific data, confirm this truth. Pornography, on the other hand, promotes, eroticizes, and instills the antithesis of each and every one of these marital ideals. Consequently, when a married woman discovers that her husband has been secretly and perhaps even compulsively consuming pornography, the discovery not only shatters her sense of security and trust, but it also threatens the very relational world that she has constructed. She is suddenly confronted with how psychologically split her supposedly modern man really is, and it is devastating. Learning that she is one of many instead of an exclusive life partner is excruciatingly painful, especially when the many are virtual, airbrushed fantasies and exploited strangers. As the famous author Virginia Woolf once aptly stated, quote, "It is far harder to kill a phantom than a reality," end quote. It is not uncommon for women in this situation to say things like, "I have no idea who he really is anymore. I feel like I've lived a lie the entire time I've been married, or I've been blindsided and duped." Sadly, a growing number of women are experiencing just this very kind of betrayal in their primary relationship. Given that 1/3 of all data transferred across the World Wide Web is pornographic in nature, and that the rising generation of males and females is increasingly desensitized to pornography's influence, I predict that we have not yet seen the upper limits of this societal threat and phenomenon. Although the majority of pornography consumption does not fall into the category of addiction, it is critical that we not minimize or ignore the fact that a person does not need to reach the threshold of addiction in order to cause grave harm. Even one exposure to pornography can have long-lasting negative effects. And we know from research that it takes less than 5 hours of exposure for us to see changes in human attitudes and beliefs. Pornography, which includes a wide spectrum of content, is problematic across all degrees of usage because the continuum of impact does not slide between benign effect and benefit, but rather between minimal and severe harm, and hundreds of studies bear this out. It is important to acknowledge, however, that internet pornography plays an underlying role in one of the fastest growing areas of addiction. When we examine the 11 most commonly studied areas of addiction, including process addiction or behavioral addictions such as shopping, eating, gambling, we know that sex addiction has the 3rd highest number of negative consequences, behind drugs and alcohol, which are tied for first, and cigarette smoking, which is tied for second place, and has the 5th highest rate of prevalence. When we combine this information with the fact that there are an estimated 12 million sex addicts in the United States alone, and many people, such as myself, believe that number is actually very low compared to reality, and also the fact that the majority of sex addicts seeking treatment are married, heterosexual males, hence the reason I'm focusing on wives today, we are literally talking about many millions of mothers and women that are impacted worldwide. Women in various relationships can experience intense and adverse reactions to pornography use. But research has shown that married women are unique and distinct in that they are more distressed by a partner's pornography use and online activity than women in dating or cohabitating relationships. As would be expected, the distress that they experience and report increases according to the perceived increase, or frequency rather, of their partner's use. But what is interesting is that their distress is not influenced by religious beliefs, which effectively counters the false notion and argument that these women are only distressed because of a conservative or religious mindset. This is simply not true. One reason pornography consumption can be so potent is that it is rarely an isolated pursuit. Various studies have revealed that pornography, which is a supernormal stimuli, which is mentioned in the film, is frequently associated with, but not limited to, compulsive masturbation, increased risk of aggressive and abusive behavior, misogynistic attitudes, which is the hatred of women, domestic violence, mood disorders, substance abuse, and dependence, a 3-fold increase in the likelihood of committing adultery, a 4-fold increase in the likelihood of hiring prostitutes and engaging in sexual exploitation, sexual dysfunction, diminished spirituality, decreased mental and physical well-being, and increased risk of job loss, separation, and divorce. With these associated propensities in mind, we gain valuable insight into why marriage is the most vulnerable relationship to pornography's impact, and why wives are so deeply and profoundly impacted by it. To help us really empathize with this situation, I'd like to invite each of us here right now to deeply ponder what it would be like for you to be married to someone with one or several of these tendencies. What would that really be like? Not just for a moment, but day after day. And have you ever met a teenager or single adult who has said they are seeking any of these traits in a future spouse? Would you agree with me that it is telling that the almost always universal answer to that question is no? And it's often said with a tone of, "Are you crazy?" These are not the things that we seek after in our future, in our dreams. This universal answer and insight may help explain why in the vast majority of cases, roughly 84 to 87% to be exact, issues with pornography are kept secret and are discovered accidentally rather than disclosed by the user. Discovering or catching someone you love who is entangled in this web only compounds the sense of shock, fear, and deep violation of trust. Some of the most common effects experienced by married women in this situation include intense emotions and difficulty in regulating those emotions, disruption in core beliefs, including at times spiritual beliefs, changes in her perception of reality, herself, and certainly her husband. It is also common for wives to become hypervigilant and to engage in policing or even investigative behaviors as they try to thwart further betrayal and seek out the full truth and scope of what has been going on behind her back. We also see significant changes in weight, body image, sleep, appetite, libido, and I would add even parenting ability. We see increased risk for separation and divorce, especially when a husband is unwilling to acknowledge the problem or seek treatment. Increased risk for separation and divorce, especially when a husband... Sorry, I just said that. I'm sorry. I have yet to also meet an affected mother who did not have strong fears for her children. She may fear her children having been sexualized or abused in some way, however subtly or blatant, or fear that her children may now be at further risk for this issue themselves down the road. Wives are also at increased risk for contraction of sexually transmitted diseases due to a husband's possible sexual acting out and high-risk behavior. I have had many clients, some of whom I've met this week and last week, who discovered their husband's pornography use and compulsive behavior after testing positive for an STD through a routine physical exam or after a miscarriage. This experience is horrific. It is traumatic. It is shameful, and it is deeply embarrassing for women. And this is part of the public health concern that I have with this issue in marriages across the country. Abrupt changes in her own behavior are also not uncommon. And these changes in behavior usually represent maladaptive attempts to try to cope with the betrayal and also try to gain some sense of control and stability over a situation that feels out of control. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a common diagnosis for wives. The groundbreaking research of Dr. Barbara Steffens revealed that approximately 70% of wives met the criteria for PTSD, which can include symptoms of intense fear and anxiety, intrusive reliving of the discovery, and avoidance of certain situations and people as a way to cope with triggers or avoid being triggered. We normally think of war veterans when we think of PTSD, and I come from a military family, and I want to make it clear of my sensitivity and full awareness of situations with PTSD related to war and combat. But today, I want to make a comparison that is accurate for so many families. Because in these situations, it is as if the war has literally invaded their own home. And the person that she thought was her safe harbor and ally has suddenly become enemy number one. And you don't just hop on a plane and fly back to America for that. What this results is an almost constant state of being triggered and feeling unsafe. Secondary trauma is also a risk, and this happens when confidants, family members, caregivers, clergy, even clinicians invalidate her experience, minimize the issue, or give well-intentioned but ill-informed and at times even dangerous counsel and advice. We also see depression and anxiety, and at times, in rare cases, suicidality for these women. The majority of women also experience isolation. In my own research with wives, 68% of them experience isolation, even when they had strong networks of support and positive relationships in their life. Domestic violence and abuse are unfortunately legitimate concerns and realities for too many women. A growing number of researchers and clinicians, including myself, are beginning to recognize a connection between pornography use and physical, sexual, financial, and emotional abuse. While definitive causal ties cannot yet be determined, it is important to recognize that there is a correlation and connection between pornography use and abuse in marriage for women as we speak here today. The safety of women and children must be a priority in our understanding of this whole issue and the situations that we will come across and deal with. If anyone here, and I say this boldly but with sensitivity as well, if there is anyone here who is inclined to think of pornography use as a benign pastime, a personal vice, or sin, I would plead with you to also see this issue as a genuine safety concern for women and children around the world on both sides of the lens. To add insult to injury, wives are often directly or indirectly blamed for their husband's pornography use. Many women I've worked with clinically describe stinging insinuations that somehow the marriage must have been unsatisfying, that she's let herself go, that she's too focused on the children. Too often, the woman's experience of the marital relationship or the fact that he was consuming pornography long before he even knew her becomes too conveniently dismissed. Consequently, the pornography and sexual exploitation remains unchallenged, and the always out-of-tune cultural chime of boys will be boys is reinforced yet again, and everyone loses. The boys and the girls, the men and the women. On equal footing with blame has been the trend in my own mental health field to generally pathologize these women as having their own diseases or co-addictions. A study in 2011, however, that was conducted right here in Utah showed that wives of hypersexual men are not more prone to having psychopathology when compared to a control group, but rather are significantly more distressed about their marriages than women not dealing with hypersexual behavior in their relationship. When I began my work in this specialty almost over 15 years ago, there was next to nothing in the way of research, treatment options, and resources for wives, and I remain indebted to this day to the many women in Canada, where I'm from, and in the United States, as well as in England, who had the courage, the phenomenal courage, to step out and speak up about this incredibly sensitive and difficult area. And it was in their courage to speak out that I was able to understand this multifaceted issue and also understand how endemic this problem is. Today, a growing number of individuals and institutions do understand and see what I have attempted to convey here today at this unique and influential gathering. And that is, that pornography consumption is incongruent with what we know about healthy, stable marriages, and it is a genuine threat to the function and safety of the marital bond. That pornography use is widespread and sexually addictive behavior is on the rise globally. And lastly, married women are especially and profoundly impacted by the discovery of pornography consumption or sexually addictive behavior in their primary relationship. Their need for validation and support is legitimate. As dark and heavy of a subject as this is, I want to publicly declare my resolute belief that change, hope, and healing are possible. They are. And even though pornography use and all of these other dark subjects are on the rise, research, resources, and public awareness are also on the rise. And in time, I believe we will see more systemic understanding and acceptance of pornography as a genuine public health concern, which threatens the healthy development of our youth, the formation of stable marriages and families, and the well-being of men and women alike. I invite everyone here to be a part of this rising level of awareness and social change. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Dawn Hawkins. I'm from the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. And now that we saw this really great film, which I haven't seen for a year, I'm going to change my whole presentation. So bear with me. I want to focus on exposing the connections between all forms of sexual exploitation. We've spent a lot of time talking about the impact of pornography on children and families, so I just want to kind of expand that and talk about the impact of pornography on our culture. Yesterday, I sadly had the experience of riding on tracks right out here in front of the hotel. I had a meeting down near Temple Square for an hour, and I took tracks back. And while I was on I always say metro, the streetcar, on tracks, there were two men at the end yelling obscenities at me and saying just terrible things. I just sat there looking out the window, rolling my eyes and ignoring them. And everybody else on the train remained silent. That's the culture that we live in. Even I, who usually have no problem speaking up and yelling about something when I'm frustrated, I stayed quiet and I just accepted it because that's the world that I've come to live in, and I'm used to these kind of things. That's the world that so many young women are living in. Let me just focus on this one. It is beyond an individual's or a family's capacity to overcome or protect against pornography alone. I'm so overwhelmed to see that this room is full. Many of you are sitting on the floor, and many had to be turned away. It's encouraging to know that so many people want to do something about pornography. It's important to realize that the answer is doesn't just lay with the parents. It doesn't just lay with the individual, because this has become so much worse. It's coming at us from every angle. We would argue that pornography is a public health crisis, and we're encouraging all to start treating it as such. We're based in Washington, D.C. We're meeting regularly with government leaders, different agencies. We're trying to get medical professionals, more scholars, everybody on board to address this issue, because parents alone can't protect against it. Let me just skip forward. So, sex trafficking and sexual violence right now, they seem to be the buzzwords. Everybody's talking about these issues in the news. Our president and Congress have set up special committees to address these problems. It's clearly a problem in our colleges and universities. It's a problem in our military. Everybody's worried about sex trafficking, prostitution, and sexual violence. But we would argue that these things individually are not happening in a vacuum, but rather they're all connected. There's a continuum of sexual exploitation, and pornography is one of the driving sources for this. So there is quite a lot of research that shows that those who are viewing pornography tend to be more likely to accept what we call rape myths. They're more likely to accept the notion that a man cannot rape his wife, that only bad women are raped, that rape is a crime of passion. People who view pornography regularly think often that when a guy spends money on a date, that the woman owes him sex. They often believe that no actually means yes. In pornography, when a woman is saying no, she does really mean yes in the film. That's how it's depicted. And one thing that's interesting to note is that it's not only the men who are viewing pornography who tend to be more accepting of these rape myths, but it's also the women who are being exposed to pornography. They tend to be more accepting as well. They tend to think that my mouth is so dry. Women tend to think that they should be expected to act this way, or that they can't speak up against this, that they deserved such behavior. When a colleague of mine looked online, she just typed in rape porn, and you can see 71,600 results. Hardcore violent pornography is the norm. Pornography today is no longer pictures of just topless women. Playboy, many of you heard, they just said last week that they're no longer going to have, thank you, Craig. They're no longer going to have nudity within their magazine. This isn't a good thing. This is because sexual violence has become so normalized that nobody wants to look at Playboy anymore. They want to look at the very hardcore violent material that's so easy to find elsewhere. Here's a quote from a young man, age 14. Guys urinating and defecating on women, women with animals, men torturing and raping women. I've seen it all. And so have a lot of my friends. We started off right away with hardcore. It's right there, always in your face when you go to a lot of these movie download sites on the internet. A few years ago, Dr. Gail Dines, who often also talks about pornography, she said to me that it took her 10 minutes to find softcore pornography when she went online. She wrote the book Pornland. I didn't believe her. I didn't believe her at all. So I tried it myself. It didn't take me quite 10 minutes, but it took me hard searching to find softcore pornography when I typed in words like sex and some of these words that kids are no doubt going and typing in Google because they want to know about these things. They want to know about sex. They want to know about intimacy. They want to know what adults are doing. And since parents are often not talking to their kids about these things, they're going straight to Google. And this is what kids are seeing. Just a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if some of you saw this in the news, but Old Dominion University, one of the frat houses, hung these signs outside of their frat house. And I've seen quite a few other fraternities as well who have done similar, but it says, freshman daughter drop off. Go ahead and drop mom off too. Rowdy and fun. Hope your baby girl is ready for a good time. This is the culture that our young men and young women are living in, where this is acceptable and okay, and they don't even think about it again. There's a study that's soon to come out by Dr. Marianne Layden. She's on our board, so she told us previously, but you can expect it to come out soon. She did a survey of a private New England university, young men ages 18 to 23, and of those young men, 1 in 4 said that they either have already gone to a prostituted woman or that they plan to go to a prostituted woman. I mean, can you imagine what that means when our young men think it's completely normal and fine to go and buy sex, to go pay for it? What does that mean for the future families and marriages that they're going to have? What does that mean for the women? What does that mean for who is going to supply that for this growing demand for prostituted women? You can bet that women are going to be victimized even more. Pornography as a script for sexual violence. There are quite a few studies about the violence in pornography. The best one, I would argue, is by Dr. Anna Bridges. She found that she studied reviewed 50 of the top pornography films, best-selling ones. She found that 88% of them 88% of the scenes in these films showed physical aggression and violence, and that of those, 94% of those scenes depicted the aggression or violence against women particularly, and that most of that was done by men in the film. What does that teach? What is that teaching society? It's teaching society that women are to be used, abused, and discarded, that they're objects, that men run the show. We argue that the more hardcore pornography that is out there, the more addiction, adultery, divorce that there will be, the more prostitution and sex trafficking there will be, the more child sexual abuse and child sexual abuse images or child pornography there will be. Everybody seems to be in agreement that these things on the top of the pyramid are a bad thing and we need to do something about it. But we need to stop ignoring one of the major factors driving these problems. We have to address pornography. Let me talk specifically about pornography and sex trafficking. I will go quickly. Pornography is often used as a tool. Pimps and traffickers often show trafficked and prostituted women pornography so that they know what to do, so that they're more desensitized to what's going to be expected of them. Sex buyers often learn how to use women from pornography. I've talked with many survivors of prostitution and trafficking, and they've explained that often men would actually bring pornography to them and show them that that's what they wanted. Also, pimps are getting smarter now. They can make so much more money by selling women online than they can on the corner. It's harder to get caught when they're selling them online. Backpage.com, Craigslist, Facebook, all of these places have become a marketplace for buying and selling women and children. And what's worse is they've realized they can make even more money, not just by selling women one time, but by recording that and then using that footage again and again to continue to increase their profits. It's bad enough that these women are beaten and raped and exploited, but it's even worse that that abuse is filmed and that it's then shared again and again and again with who knows how many people. Sometimes I've spent some time on forums where Johns tend to hang out and they talk about their experiences. And I just a couple years ago copied these down. One John said, they were just talking about porn in the forum. They said, porn and mongering go together like peas and carrots. Many times I start out watching porn, the next thing I know I'm in my car looking for the real thing. I watch the positions, find a girl who looks like one of the performers, and I make porn build up to the party. The more I've watched pornography, the more specific my wants have become. Watching pornography has also shaped my sexual desires. I watch pornography and I discover, hey, that really turns me on, and I want to recreate what I've seen in porn. A lot of wives and girlfriends, they don't want to do the degrading acts that are found in pornography. And so what happens? I'm not saying that all porn users will seek out a prostituted or trafficked woman or child, but many are seeking it out because their wives and girlfriends don't want to perform like they are seeing in pornography. One thing that's just blown my mind is when I read in this magazine Details, a prominent female pornographer was explaining that it's not really hard to find girls who are willing to perform in pornography because today the girls, they just seem to come to the set porn ready. Think about the world that our young kids are living in. Miley Cyrus, Cosmopolitan Magazine, MTV, all of these things, you just walk down the street and you're bombarded. Girls are told that in order to get attention, they have to objectify themselves. It's all about their beauty. It's about sex. It's not about their talents or their brains or their dreams. It's about how they can perform for a man. I am done. Okay. Let me just say, there's so much we can do. We can't arrest, prosecute, incarcerate, legislate, treat, or educate our way out of the problems with pornography. It will take all of that and more to overcome this issue. It takes you protecting your home, talking to your children, speaking up in your communities. It takes us saying to corporations and to laws that facilitate exploitation that we are not going to stand for that and we demand change. So I encourage all of you to, I wish I could spend more time on the positive things, but maybe we'll get to that. Okay, thank you.